What's going on, YouTube? My name is Zach with Android Digest, and today I'm going to be reviewing the Google Pixel 6a. This is a budget or a mid-range phone that Google released for about $450. They did send this phone to me about a week or two before the release of it, but honestly, I wanted to take my time and give you a good and thoughtful review. So with all that being said, let's get right into it and let's check out the Google Pixel 6a. So the Google Pixel 6a, it did release at a similar price to the iPhone SE, and I know this channel is Android Digest, but honestly, I think this phone absolutely blows out of the water all these other phones at this price. I think this is a terrific phone for $450, but there are still some cons and really some negatives that some of you need to think about if you're really thinking about buying it. But realistically, it's a great phone for a good price with some compromises. So if we look at the design, you're already going to see some compromises, but realistically, I just don't think a lot of you are going to care. If you look at it, it's not a glass back, even though it looks like it. It's actually a plastic back, and it's got this ceramic coating on it. If you compare it to the Google Pixel 6, I do have that right here, I don't even feel a difference. I don't even see a difference. This is a 6.1 inch screen. This Google Pixel 6 is a 6.4 inch screen, but I don't really notice a lot of differences between these phones as far as the design, even though there are some, and again, they're just not that noticeable. This, for example, the Google Pixel 6a, it does not have Gorilla Glass Victus. It has like Gorilla Glass 3, I think, on the front of the screen. Just get a decent case on it and you should be fine. And honestly, if you look at this overall, it's going to have similar bezels to the Google Pixel 6. You're going to have a similar design language when you look at something like the camera, but the camera doesn't pop out quite as much on the design, so I do like that. So overall, fantastic design on this Google Pixel 6a. It's absolutely great. And when we look at the display, you're still going to see some compromises, but again, I don't think they're going to be that big of a deal to most people. You do have a 6.1 inch screen with the same resolution as the Google Pixel 6. It's a 2400 by 1080 resolution, but you are going to have a 60 Hz refresh rate. Now, a lot of phones around this price point, they might have a 90 Hz refresh rate or 120 Hz, but just remember, a lot of those phones do not have an OLED screen. So this does have an OLED screen. The colors look good. The colors look accurate. The screen is phenomenal to use, and I heard some people out there say that this was the worst 60 Hz phone out. It's one of the worst phones. It's stuttery. It's a mess. It's one of the worst 60 Hz phones I've used ever. Look, I've heard it all, and honestly, that's a bunch of hooey. This does run Google Pixel software. Whenever I'm scrolling around, I don't notice anything as far as the refresh rate. Of course, if you're a tech snob, if you're someone who has used 120 Hz phones before, maybe you're someone out there who has a Galaxy S22 Ultra, you are going to notice those things. But your average person, if you're just watching this and you're just a normal person who's used a phone for $200 or $300 or $400, I don't think you're going to notice this 60 Hz refresh rate. But realistically, this phone still feels smooth. It still looks smooth while you're scrolling. And again, the colors look great for videos. If you're watching videos on this phone, they're going to look absolutely great. So again, there are minor compromises with the screen, with the design, and you will see some minor compromises with performance. Now, this does have Google's flagship processor. It does have the Google Tensor chip, and it does have 6 GB of RAM, so not 8 GB like the Google Pixel 6, but this processor, it does fly, right? There's not a lot of issues with performance, so it's going to perform very similarly actually to the Google Pixel 6 and the Google Pixel 6 Pro. Again, when I'm using this phone, it does not get warm to the touch. It does not get hot. It does fly through everything I do, but I'm normally someone who's a lighter user. I'm someone who checks my email. I'm someone who goes to Google News. I'm someone who goes to Best Buy or Amazon. But outside of that, I'm just not a power user. I'm not someone who really goes on games and plays on the very highest settings. Now, you do need to know this phone, one of the minor compromises with it, it's a little bit smaller than something like the Pixel 6 or the 6 Pro, so it doesn't do quite as well with heat. Now, again, I had no issues with heat at all, outside of it getting a little bit warmer during the setup process and while it was downloading all those apps and updates. I did not have any issues with heat, but some people out there are reporting that it is getting warmer for them, and a lot of those people live in warmer climates. And if you're someone out there who doesn't have air conditioning, maybe you work outside with your phone all the time, this phone isn't going to do quite as well with heat. But if you're someone like me who just uses your phone for your everyday task, who just uses it to take pictures, browse the web, and you do some light web surfing on it, you just go between apps like me, I don't think you're going to notice a lot of issues. Now, if we look at other compromises this phone has made, look, just because Google sent me this phone doesn't mean I don't want to knock it. There are some compromises. You don't get wireless charging. The wired charging is about 18 watts for wired charging, so it's going to be a little bit slower to charge. That's not a big deal to me, but maybe you're someone out there and it is. And if it is, just don't buy the phone. But realistically, under $500, they really need to make some compromises to keep the price low. So no wireless charging. Again, you're going to have to deal with the fingerprint sensor. That's another thing with this phone. It does have a in-screen fingerprint sensor, and it's still a little bit slower than a lot of other phones out there. But it does have similar performance in my testing to the Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro. So it is a little bit slower than other fingerprint sensors, but I will say I did have a little bit of better reliability with this sensor than I did with the Google Pixel 6. So if you're wanting to buy this phone just to get a better fingerprint sensor than your Google Pixel 6, I wouldn't buy it for that reason. It might be a little bit more reliable, but it's still going to be a little bit slower, and that might be an issue to some of you. But if you don't really care about just putting your thumb on the phone an extra half second or an extra second, again, your average person probably won't care about those things. So I know so far in this review, I've talked a lot about that word compromise, and that could make you think that this phone is not worth buying, but that is the furthest thing from the truth. If we look at that retail price at $450, of course they are going to make some compromises compared to $700 or $800 phones. But if you look at this device and you compare it to the market out there, this phone has the best design out of any phone under $500. This phone has the best performance with that Google Tensor chip that you're really going to find around this price range. And it also has a very, very good display that your average person, well, they're just not going to notice that 60 hertz refresh rate. So this phone is about making the right compromises and about giving you the best phone and the best performance, the best battery life, and even the best camera for the money. This camera is a tremendous camera, by the way. It's one of the best parts of this phone. This does share the same main sensor as the Google Pixel 5 and all of the older Google Pixels like the 4 and the 3. A bunch of those phones had the same sensor. So the sensor is a little bit old in this phone, but Google has refined it with software, and this phone takes tremendous photos with the main camera. This phone does share the same sensor as the Google Pixel 6 for the ultra-wide camera, at least from the research I've done. And overall, the camera is just very good on this phone. If you look at the shots that I took, whether it was with the main camera or with the ultra-wide camera, these shots look really, really good. The camera looks absolutely great with portraits when I was taking pictures of my family or when I was taking pictures outside of nature. The camera is very, very good. And the video quality is still very good as well. If you want a phone that just takes really good pictures, if you want a phone with a good display and great performance, and you're really trying to do all of that on a budget, that's really who this is targeted for. It's just for your person who wants a good phone for a good price, who doesn't care about all the bells and whistles like the refresh rate. And if you don't care about having the best video quality on your camera, the video quality is still good even when you're using 4K on this camera. But again, you're not going to get the absolute flagship quality that you might get from something like the Google Pixel 6. But most people were impressed when I showed them the pictures from this and when I showed them the video from this. A+ on the camera department. The battery life is also very good on this phone as well. This has a 4410 milliamp battery, and even though it's not quite as big of a battery as the Google Pixel 6, the battery life is still really, really good because it does have a 60 hertz refresh rate and the screen is a little bit smaller, which helps to conserve some battery. So factor all that in, and the battery life was getting me over 6 hours of screen on time, sometimes even around 7 hours. So great battery life, great display, great performance. You're going to get a great experience overall on this phone. You just have to ask yourself if you're okay dealing with the compromises here. So should you buy this phone? Who is this phone for? Well, I'll tell you one thing. This phone isn't for the tech snob who wants the latest and greatest everything. If you're someone who's used like a Galaxy S22 Ultra, you might care about that 120 hertz refresh rate. Or maybe you care about having a super fast fingerprint sensor. If that's you, honestly, I don't think you're going to want this phone. But if you're someone out there looking for a good bargain and you just want a good phone for under $500. That's who this is for. This is also a Google phone with all of the fancy Google features. So voice dictation is way better on this phone than a lot of other phones. You get magic eraser in the camera so you could erase annoying things out of your pictures. Or if you're doing a thumbnail like me, you could just erase a little piece of dead skin that's on your face, right? Those are things that you could do with the magic eraser, and that really does help a lot of basic people who just want to take good photos. You want a good experience on your phone, and you could even have those Google features, of course, like the hold for me option. There's a lot of great features in Google phones, and when you get this phone under $500, there's not a lot of phones under $500 that can match it. If you look at a phone like the Nothing phone, first off, that phone is coming from a startup company, and we don't know how reliable those phones will be over time. And the customer service for the Nothing phone has been awful. A lot of people are complaining that it's taking a week just to get a hold of a customer service representative. And bigger YouTubers aren't even mentioning these things with the Nothing phone. It's also not available in the US at all. So really, when we look at all of these comparisons that these big YouTubers are making, honestly, there's not a lot of comparisons in the US at this price point. So if you're someone who's okay with the compromises, if you just want a phone that looks good, that performs good, if you're looking for a great phone with a great camera, with great software, with a great screen, for a great price, this is absolutely a great phone to buy. Now, if you see the regular Google Pixel 6 and if you see it on sale, you might as well buy that if the prices are pretty close, because the Google Pixel 6 has a few extra features that you may appreciate. But if you see them and they're like $150 or $200 away, don't hesitate to buy this phone. But if you see this phone and it's like $200 cheaper than the Google Pixel 6 or $150 cheaper, if you see this and you're really considering buying it, I would say it's absolutely worth buying. It's a great phone for the money, and honestly a great phone that a lot of you should consider. So if you are considering it, feel free to use those links in the description. Using those does support my channel. And also, thank you so much for watching this video. Please give me a like and a sub if you did enjoy it. And also, check out some other videos if you get a little bit more time. I do plan to actually review the Google Pixel 6 and the 6a together and really compare them and see which one is better. So feel free to stay tuned to my channel. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. So I hope you have a great day, and thank you for your time.